Toxic masculinity is among the most unfortunate and damaging aspects of human society. Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
Now, I know toxic masculinity is very close to buzzword level. It kind of sounds like a 60s horror movie or something. Beware the toxic masculinity. So this video is going to give you a specific overview of what I mean when I say toxic masculinity and why it's a problem. The term refers to a tendency that men in many societies have to value and exhibit excessive levels of aggression, risk-taking, and stoicism, to the exclusion of traits like modesty, moderation, and emotional sensitivity. It also refers to the exaggerated stereotypes and attitudes our society has about men because of these tendencies. And I don't necessarily mean the bull-headed Johnny Bravo archetype, although that's a thing. I've definitely met human cartoon characters like that. But these attitudes can appear in many different but related ways. Now, as the name implies, toxic masculinity is regular masculinity when taken to harmful and dangerous levels. In some ways, masculinity is based on biology and evolution. Males are typically larger and stronger than females, so their roles in society have historically involved utilizations of power. Also, males usually have higher levels of testosterone than females, which is associated with increased aggression and risk-taking. For the most part, though, masculinity is a social construct and can be defined differently in different cultures. Many of the traits that we in the West associate with manliness, like courage and assertiveness and being a stone cold beer drinking badass. What? These traits obviously can be and often are exhibited by people who aren't biologically masculine. But in a society that usually favors and advantages men, it's not hard to imagine why traits involving power and dominance become associated with men. Masculinity becomes toxic when these traits are exhibited in a destructive or abusive way. And this can manifest itself in a lot of different ways and to different degrees. The most obvious iteration of toxic masculinity is the idea of a real man and the irrational aversion to characteristics deemed not masculine. Sometimes this is a relatively minor offense, such as a guy making fun of his friend for ordering a fruity drink or enjoying a romantic comedy, like When Harry Met Sally, the greatest rom-com of all time. Billy Crystal the God. But this can also be more harmful to an individual or the people around them. For example, some people feel that avoiding challenges or confrontations is a sign of weakness and might engage in aggressive or dangerous behavior to avoid seeming vulnerable or cowardly. Things that are considered not manly are usually traits that are associated with women. And this illustrates another big problem with toxic masculinity, which is when we describe the relationship between men and women as competitive or adversarial. You know, stuff like men and women will never understand each other, or men and women can never really be friends. Speaking of When Harry Met Sally. I mean, this idea is the source material for roughly 50% of stand-up comedy. My wife is mean to me. This kind of masculinity goes hand in hand with heterosexuality, and because society's description of men involves dominance and assertiveness, naturally this can lead to a predator-prey type relationship with women. And this is an unfortunate setup, especially when it comes to sex and romance, because it can lead to men seeing women as a prize or a conquest rather than a human equal, and feeling entitled to romantic or sexual gratification just by virtue of being a man, which then leads to feeling inadequate or disgruntled if they're not as successful at that as they'd like to be. Now, the examples so far have been kind of tame, but this can lead to terrible circumstances like domestic abuse and sexual assault, and even the murder of innocent people. Because of the strong connection of these ideas of masculinity to heterosexuality, homophobia is also a byproduct of these attitudes. Being a gay man is often erroneously equated to being a feminine man, and thus is rejected by this mindset. Now, this is not supposed to be an attack on men. Yes, sometimes these attitudes cause men to behave badly, but toxic masculinity also indirectly harms men themselves. For example, men literally die earlier on average than women do, and are more likely to get certain diseases like cancer. And this is partially due to men's increased likelihood to ignore concerns about their health because of pride or perceived invincibility. Men also have high rates of drug addiction and homelessness due to increased risk-taking. And as mentioned, this also affects how society sees and treats men. People, including men and women and everybody else, often hold men to a standard that some people feel that they can't achieve. Men are more likely to be imprisoned than women and get harsher punishments for the same crimes. And this is probably because of the perception of men as naturally more dangerous and violent. In most countries in the world, there's no legal definition for the rape of a man because of the perception of men being the aggressors and dominators. So men who are raped are unable to seek proper legal recourse. And the combination of the fact that men are less likely to seek help for these issues and the fact that society often often perceives men as not needing help, it leads to a cyclical issue. So it's not only important for men to take the initiative to try and unlearn some of this conditioning, but we also as a society have to create spaces for men to openly talk about the things they're dealing with and actually be heard. Now, I don't think there's a problem with the concept of manhood or masculinity. The problem is when we have these rigid one-dimensional definitions that cause people to overcompensate in order to prove their manliness. And when we include problematic traits into our definition of manliness, like violence and hubris. Personally, being a man is an important part of my identity, but I want to express my masculinity in a way that feels right to me. And our society has to get better at providing an opportunity for more people to do that. That's just me though. What do you think? Thank you for watching my video. I have got t-shirts for sale once again, and longtime fans of the channel might appreciate these. These designs are sort of an updated version of the very first t-shirts that I ever sold way back in the day. As always, you have about 20 days to get these. It would be really cool if you did that. Links in the description below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to this channel for more discussions about social issues, current events, and pop culture. And if you don't want a shirt but you still want to support me, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 a month helps tremendously. And remember, stay hanky.